Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Pertamanya minta maaf, lama menunggu. Kami pun berlepas habis mesyuarat sebab mesyuarat kita banyak yang tertangguh-tangguh. The last meeting was meeting on sifat berkenaan dengan negara-negara Asia, negara sama dengan Jepun dan Korea, untuk kita berbincang tentang pembangunan semula di Palestine dan yang pastinya kita punya kegusaran berkenaan dengan keadaan di Palestin yang ada sekarang. Alhamdulillah kita telah pun selesai mesyuarat Menteri Luar ASEAN yang ke-58. Ini adalah merupakan mesyuarat yang perlu kita lakukan untuk memulakan gerak kerja bagi persiapan mesyuarat sidang pemuncak ASEAN ke-47 yang akan diadakan pada 26 sampai 28 Oktober nanti. Jadi hasil daripada mesyuarat ini akan dibawa dan dikemukakan ke mesyuarat ketua-ketua negara pada bulan Oktober nanti. So, overview of the Foreign Ministers Meeting over the past few days. We had 21 meetings involving ASEAN and its external partners, and the 4th Ministerial Conference and Cooperation among East Asian countries for Palestinian development.
Separately, I had 15 bilateral meetings with my counterparts from Algeria, from Australia, Bangladesh, Brunei Darussalam, Canada, China, Japan, New Zealand, Palestine, the Philippines, Switzerland, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, and Uruguay. During all these meetings, we discussed strengthening bilateral relations and international issues of common concern. Dalam mesyuarat-mesyuarat itu banyak isu-isu yang kami bincangkan, terutamanya situasi di Myanmar. During the discussion on Myanmar, ASEAN ministers urgently call on all parties in Myanmar, in particular the SAC, to cease hostilities and violence, observe and respect ceasefires, as well as ensure unimpeded humanitarian access. This is in line with the decision of the 46th Summit in May. The ministers continued to express support for the efforts of the Special Envoy for ASEAN Chair on Myanmar, Tan Sri Osman Hashim, in facilitating a peaceful resolution to the crisis. We also emphasized the importance of continuity in ASEAN approach to address the crisis. Malaysia expressed concern that the implementation of 5-point consensus on the ground is still lacking. We call on stakeholders to undertake concrete action in this regard. Out of the 5 points, 3 points fall on the stakeholders to implement. They are cessation of hostilities and violence. Number 2, inclusive dialogue involving all parties concerned. And number 3, humanitarian assistance to the people of Myanmar. The rest, the other 2, is on our part. That is appointment of the special envoy. And the last one is the fever. The assistant by all parties and the Secretary General assistant on this situation in Myanmar. Malaysia has consistently called on the SAC as the de facto party in power to show leadership and sincerity in committing towards peace and create a conducive environment for inclusive political dialogue. On the planned elections, Malaysia's position remained clear and consistent I have said before that peace is the priority. This means pursuing inclusive dialogue. I have also said before the election must be inclusive, free, fair, and transparent. They said they want to have an election. They can have election if it is inclusive and fair to everybody. But if it's a partial election, I don't think that is a good idea to have an election, early election this year. During the AMM retreat, I stressed to the Myanmar delegation that elections have to be inclusive. Everybody, all political parties, all stakeholders have to be able to participate. There is no point in having an election if it is not inclusive. I also stated that peace and cessation of hostilities must be a priority before elections. Any election held without prior inclusive dialogue and political agreement with all Myanmar stakeholders are likely to worsen the conflict and will not be seen as credible or legitimate. A lot of discussion on South China Sea. Malaysia underscored the importance of dialogue and diplomacy to preserve the South China Sea as the sea of peace, stability, and trade. Malaysia's position has always been consistent and clear. All disputes relating to the South China Sea must be resolved in accordance with universally recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or known as UNCLOS. We emphasize that need for the full and effective implementation of the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties, DOC. Malaysia is encouraged by the progress in the negotiation of the draft Code of Conduct in South China Sea and will continue supporting efforts towards its early conclusion. On SHONFEST, or Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty, ASEAN Foreign Ministers expressed concern over the global security environment characterized by the development of new nuclear weapons, advancement of nuclear weapon system, and rise in nuclear weapons rhetoric. That makes it more imperative for the nuclear weapon state to sign and ratify the protocol to the SHONFEST Treaty. We welcome China's readiness to sign and ratify the SHONFEST protocol without reservations and the renewed interest by some nuclear weapon states to sign and ratify the protocol. ASEAN is resuming substantive discussion with the countries concerned on outstanding issues concerning the protocol. There are more positive developments. Timor-Leste is scheduled to accede to the SHONFEST Treaty in October this year at the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summit. This will expand the geographical scope of the treaty and strengthen security in Southeast Asia. On Gaza, there's a lot of every session we have Gaza, we have Myanmar, we have South China Sea. On Gaza, ASEAN Foreign Ministers expressed deep concern over the continued tensions in the Middle East. On Gaza, there were calls for immediate and permanent ceasefire, unhindered humanitarian access, and accountability for violence of international law. Malaysia condemned Israel's open genocide in Gaza, including mass starvation of children and babies, which is incomprehensible. Malaysia called for Israel to be held accountable for the countless violation of international law. On Israel's aggression against Iran, the ministers welcomed the ceasefire between Iran and Israel and urged that it be maintained. Malaysia called for the international community to consistently uphold the integrity of international laws or risk losing credibility. On Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, or TAC, the ministers reaffirmed the role of the TAC as a key instrument governing interstate relations in Southeast Asia and promoting regional peace and stability. On July 9, 2025, Algeria and Uruguay officially acceded to the TAC, marking the formal commitment to the principle of peaceful cooperation and regional harmony enshrined in the treaty. As of now, 57 countries have become parties of the TAC. On Timor-Leste's admission to ASEAN, Following the decision of the 46th ASEAN Summit to admit Timor-Leste as 11 members of ASEAN by the 47th ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN Foreign Ministers took note that work on the protocol on procedural steps are underway. The AMM also adopted the guidelines to facilitate Timor-Leste's accession to ASEAN legal instrument under the purview of the AMM. The AMM encouraged Timor-Leste to take action to accede to the relevant legal instruments as soon as possible. On geopolitical and geoeconomic developments, ASEAN foreign ministers urged major powers to manage their differences in a constructive and responsible manner, including through ASEAN-led mechanisms such as ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, or AOIP. To ensure that the region remains peaceful, stable, and prosperous, we underscored the importance of dialogue and cooperation through ASEAN platforms with focus on commonalities rather than differences. The AMM heard a briefing by the ASEAN Geoeconomic Task Force on the subject ASEAN Economic Outlook in the fragmented global economy. We have decided also during the 47th Summit in October, prior to that we have Foreign Ministers Meeting, we're going to rope in, or we're going to invite the Minister of Economic or Investment of respective countries so that we can put our work together. Because politics and economy now go in tandem, hand in hand, so we cannot separate both of them, because a lot of things that we have agreed but not been translated into actions. Decision and outcome documents, greater AMM-AEM coordination, that's what I said just now, as proposed by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim in his opening address during the opening ceremony. This meeting on 9 July, the AMM agreed to strengthen coordination between the ASEAN foreign ministers and economic ministers, including following up on the recommendation presented by the AGTF. With regard to application to accede to the TAC, the AMM reached decision on the following: approved the application of Cyprus, Italy, and Sweden, and agreed on ASEAN Secretariat to prepare assessment for the applications of Belgium, Croatia, and Lithuania for the consideration of ASEAN member states. Outcome document of the AMM, the ASEAN +1 dialogue partners. The outcome joint communique of the 58th AMM have been issued. The AMM adopted the ASEAN Foreign Ministers' decision on enhancing ASEAN relations with external parties as a strategic effort to expand and strengthen ASEAN global outreach aligned with the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. With India and Republic of Korea, we adopted new plans of action 2026-2030 for India and the ROK respectively. This plan of actions will guide both dialogue partners in further strengthening their partnership with ASEAN over the next 5 years. We agreed on the 2030 ASEAN-China Plan on Action, which will chart the way for greater and more robust cooperation between ASEAN and China in the next 5 years. With New Zealand, we endorsed the draft ASEAN-New Zealand Leaders Joint Vision Statement on the 50th anniversary of ASEAN-New Zealand dialogue relations. This draft document is scheduled to be adopted by the leaders at the ASEAN-New Zealand 50th Commemorative Summit in October. With Australia, we adopted a joint statement on Australia and ASEAN Shared Future, which marks the first joint statement between ASEAN and a dialogue partner on the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. CIPAT, this is the fourth CIPAT meeting just now. After concluding the 58th AMM and series of meetings with ASEAN dialogue partners, I co-chaired the fourth Ministerial Conference on Cooperation among East ASEAN countries, or CIPAT, for Palestinian development, together with my counterparts, Excellency Takashi Iwaya, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan, and Excellencies Dr. Stefan Salame, the Minister of Planning and International Cooperation of Palestine, who attended the conference as a special guest. We reaffirmed our strong support for Palestinians' right to self-determination amid the dire humanitarian and human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly Gaza, with the adoption of Kuala Lumpur Action Plan 2025. Through the Kuala Lumpur Action Plan, collective regional assistance will be galvanized to urgently address Palestinians' needs. The action plan will guide members of the CIPAT to assisting Palestine in areas, among others, humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and state building through capacity building and technical cooperation. I reaffirm Malaysia's long-standing principled position on Palestine, rights to self-determination through the swift establishment of the sovereign state of Palestine, based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. I call upon the remaining 46 states that have yet to recognize the state of Palestine to do so without any preconditions and to support Palestinians' admission as a full member of the United Nations without any further delay. Malaysia is committed to assist Palestine through targeted assistance, focusing on humanitarian aid, reconstruction and state building as well as youth development. Malaysia's technical assistance and capacity building for Palestine will primarily be undertaken through the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Programme, or MTCP. At the meeting just now, I announced Malaysia's contribution of another $1 million to be channeled to UNRWA and to the Palestinian Red Crescent. This is in addition to the USD 16 million that have been already channeled to the Palestinian people since September 2023. In conclusion, as Chair of ASEAN, Malaysia will continue to play an active role in fostering ASEAN's consensus on issues on common concern. The presence of ASEAN dialogue partners and external partners at this year's meeting underscores ASEAN's standing as a convening power capable of bringing major regional and global players to the same table. ASEAN remains firm in its pursuit of the 2 decades ASEAN Community Vision 2045, endorsed by leaders at the 46th ASEAN Summit, which aspires to build a resilient, innovative, dynamic, and people-centered region. Throughout Malaysia's ASEAN Chairmanship this year, we will maintain this positive momentum and ensure that ASEAN's voice continues to be heard prominently on the international stage, leveraging on ASEAN's growing importance and our strong convening power. Malaysia will also continue working closely with fellow ASEAN member states to position ASEAN as a key bloc within the global political and economic architecture, leveraging the strengths of each of its members. Thank you. Sekianlah adanya mesyuarat ASEAN selama 3 hari. Soalan?